Hey everybody, Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich here. Let's talk about the weekend weather coming in first. We'll get to the winter chances next week, maybe in another vlog, and I'll briefly mention it here. But we're going to focus on the weekend because we've got another batch of heavy rain heading to the Carolinas and possibly some strong storms to our southwest and for parts of the Carolinas. I'll explain more. So this is the severe weather outlook for Saturday. So let me emphasize Saturday here. You can see the risk for severe storms right here across the mid-south. Again, a medium to higher risk, again, for those areas heading into Saturday afternoon. Now, as we go into Sunday, this whole system is going to be shifting east, and you can see there is a low risk, which extends into the Carolinas. So you get the idea. This system is going to be moving in this direction. So for the Western Carolinas, this storm is likely going to be weaker. The reason you see this uptick to the east is because potentially we could see storms re-intensify in the afternoon. I still think we could see a couple strong storms in parts of South Carolina, Eastern North Carolina. But for the Western Carolinas, because of the cold wedge that's moving in, it's likely going to save us. And I'll explain more on that in a minute. But that's the severe weather outlook. Let's talk about the flood risk as well. So this is the flash flood risk, the risk of seeing flash flooding. You can see, thankfully, some of the mountains have been taken out of the medium risk and it's been shifted back to the west. So the biggest concern for flooding is going to be back in this area up into West Virginia. So this is for Saturday. I'll show you for Sunday that risk shifts into the Chesapeake and parts of Virginia, northern North Carolina. So you can see that's the risk of heavy rain. So we've got two things going on. Big system that's going to bring heavy rain and possibly some flash flooding. So let's break down the timing of all this weekend. All right, so let's dive into the forecast. So obviously today, Valentine's Day, it's gorgeous. We've got high pressure to our northeast. That has given us some great weather. In fact, this area of high pressure right here is just wedging down the eastern facing slopes, setting the stage for a pretty chilly day. That's kind of a typical, we call this cold air damming. And so that's what's going on with that high pressure to the north. So as we go into tonight, we will stay dry, but then we get closer to the overnight hours. Moisture starts to increase. So two things happen when moisture increases in this setup. It creates clouds, some of it evaporates, and it actually makes the air cooler. So this is the good old-fashioned wedge setup. You see all the heavy rain that develops to our north and west. This is why there's that flash flood risk as we go into Saturday. As we get closer to tomorrow morning, this is around 9 a.m. You could see as we look closer, most of this is just light rain, some of it heavy. A little bit of ice. There could be some ice, especially in those eastern-facing slopes again, so don't be surprised if that happens. But Saturday's an ugly day. It's going to be that cold, miserable rain like we just had. So if you remember that what we had for 2 days this week, there's more of that on tap right there. That is just a miserable setup. Now, the downside, it's cold, it's miserable, it's wet. The upside is that could protect us from severe weather. And you'll see what happens here as we go through Saturday afternoon. There's going to be a pretty nasty line of storms developing back to the west. But the cold air and the rain from early on Saturday should establish a cold pool. We call it a wedge or cold air damming. Even though the rain moves out, it's still kind of drizzly, misty, and cloudy and very stable. So that line of storms moving through areas of Tennessee down into Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, that's going to be overnight Saturday into Sunday morning. So this is 3 a.m. Sunday morning. You can see the line of storms, but here we've got cool temperatures and rain and clouds. So that helps us out. So as the front gets closer, you can see this is 7:30 in the morning, moves into the mountains. It loses some of its steam, which is exactly what we want to see because the atmosphere here is not going to be ripe or amped up for severe weather. There's a lot of wind energy, but there's no fuel, warm, humid air near the surface. That warm, humid air is likely going to be down in here. That's where you saw that severe weather outlook for Sunday. So as it moves across our area, you can see the line of storms looks much weaker. Now, it doesn't mean there couldn't be some gusty winds and certainly some thunder and lightning, but we're not expecting anything severe right now in the Western Carolinas. As it moves to the east, there might be some heating because now we're getting close to noon. There might be enough warm air that gets into the eastern part of the state. And remember, you won't be wedged in with the cold air like we are in the Western Carolinas in the coastal plain and the low country. So there's more potential for these storms to get a little stronger as they push to the east. And then they move off the coast. And on the backside, yes, the cold air spills in and that will be snow. So if you're skiing this weekend, Saturday's kind of a messy, cold, wet, rainy day. But then we go into Sunday and we actually could see snow that will last into Monday. So let's talk about the totals. How much are we going to see? Let's quickly look at the amounts of rainfall. You see the heavy rain axis is just to our west. That's where I expect it to be. So we're kind of a little bit more safe, if you will, for the potential for flooding because it looks like it stays to the north and west. And for our area, it looks to be light. Just because we've seen so much rain recently, can't rule out some isolated flooding, especially as that main line pushes through on Sunday. Okay, I promised briefly I would talk about the potential for wintry weather. We're going to get into it right here. So let me show you the outlook for next week. So I showed this graphic quite a bit. We show it on air. This is basically the potential for what is 0.25 inches of liquid equivalent. Basically, the chance of seeing 2 to 3 inches of snow or sleet. Again, and that's a key part. It's not just snow. This could be snow or sleet or even ice. It's just the liquid equivalent of that. So you can see what's happened in the last 24 hours. The risk for 30 to 50% chance of that happening is moved north of Interstate 40. And for areas south, it's around 10 to 30% for Thursday. But even on Friday, you can see that risk of snow or ice or sleet is still 10 to 30%. So it's still, the signal is still there. And that's the key part. Here we are, now getting about 5 to 6 days out. Let's quickly look at the potential for 1 inch of snow. This is always another great product to show you what's the probability of seeing 1 inch of snow. If we look very carefully, this is through next Thursday morning. You can see basically all the Carolinas are either in a 20, 30, 40, 50% range of seeing 1 inch of snow. And this is from the European ensembles. The GFS ensembles, kind of very similar. You can see North Carolina, most of it in the 20 to 40% range. So again, the signal is still there. There's still the opportunity, but I will emphasize this, and please listen. This does not mean it's going to be a big snowstorm. It does not mean it's going to be all snow. This is the probability of seeing wintry weather, which is snow, sleet, ice, and rain, and oftentimes a combination of all four. We rarely, if ever, get all snow. So don't think just snow. Think wintry weather in general as we get closer. Of course, we've still got a long ways to go. This would be next Wednesday, Thursday timeframe. And we'll talk more about that. But this weekend, have a good weekend, even though it's going to be wet and cold, and it will be windy as we see that front move through on Sunday.